Nvidia is down 17% from its highs in just 6 weeks. Since late October, the invisible AI king has shared nearly $600 billion of market cap, and the question that everybody is asking right now is, are we watching the AI bubble finally burst in real time? From Blackwell server racks literally catching fire or at least overheating to a massive $486 million inciting selling spree, the red flags are waving. But while the bears are screaming bubble, Nvidia just posted a record $57 billion in revenue, and today we're looking at the charts, the unusual options flow, and the brutal truth behind the sell-off to see if Nvidia is leading the market into a 2026 crash or if this is the ultimate buy the dip opportunity. So let's first begin here analyzing the triple Qs. Over the past couple of trading sessions, the market has been selling off consistently more than 1%. We have been seeing this overall high that was formed here at 629, and we have been seeing nothing but selling off. And actually, we're looking to finally see some type of bounce, but the market has been overall bearish. From those highs that we formed here on the 29th of October, and where the RSI told us that the stock or overall market was actually overbought, and that actually we needed a pullback, this is where we actually made that high, and we are down approximately 4% from it. Now, looking at the daily chart to get the overall view of the longer term trend, we have been seeing nothing but intense upside since those April lows. So it wouldn't be too far off to say that the market should pull back after seeing such immense gains. Now, from that high, we see that we are not too far off from the lows that was formed here at 580, which was an overall 8% decline. Anything more than a 10% decline shows that there is going to be a decline, like a bear market, just like we saw in April. Once the market saw more than a 9% decline, so around here, this was a signal we were going to see more downside, and we actually did, right? We fell from 480 all the way to 409, and this is what we're seeing currently on Nvidia. If I pull it up here on the daily chart, we're seeing, though, if we measure from this top towards the bottom, we are down 19% from the highs that were formed here at around the price of $211 per share. This does signify that we are going to see a little bit more selling in Nvidia due to the fact that the majority of the earnings are pretty much over with, and we are actually just selling off the news. So ahead of the earnings report here that Nvidia had on the 19th of November, where they actually beat quite well here on the earnings, they actually beat well above the surprise, but reporting $57 billion instead of the estimate of $54 billion. This does show that before the earnings, the majority of institutions were buying ahead of it, and then they sold after the news, right? So just some profit taking. Obviously, any institution that entered at any around this low from that high did see pretty much a 70 or 84% return from that investment. Now, I wouldn't be too surprised if Nvidia does pull back or, decline even more, because during this overall decline, we are well below the swing high anchored VWAP here. So the shorts are winning. And even if we use, let's say, a point of control here, and we plot it from that high to this overall current level, the sellers have been in control since we crossed below the level of $183 per share. Now, this does show that, the majority of sellers have been present. We see actually the pockets of volume here, showing a lot of selling around these general zones here, right? Because that was a level that was pretty much the point of control, the battle zone between the buyers and sellers. And also, if we use this anchored VWAP that was plotted from this overall low that we saw here on the 9th of May, we are pretty much trying to bounce from that, right? So this is what we call a pinch pattern, which is where we have the price action currently being in between two very important anchored VWAPs, or areas of supply and demand. So what we're doing here is that we are measuring pretty much the supply that came in, the most recent supply, right? And the longer term demand, which is this level of 169. Now, the true question is, if the buyers can sustain this overall low here and this level, then we can see more continuation towards the upside on Nvidia. So I would like to see something like this, right? So maybe we undercut the level, right? And then we slowly start to bid back up. This would be a very good sign for the overall market and for Nvidia. And eventually we would, get above this area of short-term supply, because the longer-term demand that I previously stated, which was here, held. And we would see just more upside continuation, towards, higher price targets that I have on the stock towards $260, which is where I believe that Nvidia should be trading, and is going to be, approximately a very big return around 48% from the current levels that we are seeing in the market, right? But that is a bullish scenario. Now, talking about the bearish scenario, or where everything could go wrong pretty much, would be something like this, right? So let's say that we see this pattern forming, right? And the supply that came here at this exact top right here decides to be even more aggressive, and we see more selling. So this would trigger, obviously, a break below the longer term support level, and we'll see something like this. So we'll mark it as red to kind of signify the selling pressure like this. So we'll see something like that, further decline, maybe some type of, shorter term bounce, right? And then trigger even the more like that selling, right? We would probably fall back probably towards the levels here of 164, which would be an area of support that we are going to be very interested here over the next couple of trading sessions. Also, we'll be looking forward towards this level of 151.76 and this level of support of 141.09. Obviously, this would be very disastrous for the stock, as it would lose a lot of money, and a lot of investors who are actually positioned at these highs, right? Pretty much investors that bought at the overall levels, because they were not trying to miss out because of FOMO, are going to see a very drastic decline. Now, if we use actual sound here instruments, so using, let's say, the anchored VWAP from this high, we should see some type of bounce here at around 146 or 141 if the stock does decide to pull back even more deeper. Like I said, our bearish case down 16% more. So this would be levels where I believe we would see some buying. So it would be something like this, right? So we probably see some more selling. We maybe undercut that level. We form a green candle around that general zone like this, right? And maybe a hammer candle here. And then we slowly start to see that, big momentum where the closing of this candle is higher than the opening or closing of the previous candle. This would be pretty much the initiation of a pretty much bounce, and that would be the resistance. We probably see clear that, and then we would see obviously the formation of higher highs and higher lows. So maybe we pull back here a little bit, right? And then we see again that formation like that. We break the previous downward trend structure, which was like this. We break it and we go towards the upside, finally against targeting that 260 upside target on Nvidia. So overall, Nvidia is looking like it possibly could be prone for a deeper correction towards the levels of 164, 151, and 141. That would be the bearish case. Now the bullish case is, like I said, if we do defend this overall long-term area of support, this anchored VWAP of 174, then we would see that bounce and go towards the current levels of 260, which are my price targets on this stock. Now, looking at the options market and the overall put to call ratio on Nvidia, we do see that there is expected to be more calls and puts here over the next nearest expiration date, which is the 19th of December, which is not too far off from the current day, which is around 2 days to the expiration. Now, we do see this continued pattern of higher calls and puts volume over the next couple of sessions, all the way towards here where we see that there is an equality here between the put volume and call volume, and actually the put volume is greater than the call volume here for the expiration of the 9th of January of here 2026. So we are seeing this pattern here that the majority of these Mag 7 names are seeing some type of put wall or resistance level zone at around here of January. The first 2 weeks of January, this is where there is going to be some sort of resistance that will impede the overall levels to go even higher. And I believe that is where we're going to be encountering, some resistance, which may trigger, even more selling, or just, some consolidation, pretty much have the stock being flat over that expiration date. Now, after that here, also 30 days, date to expiration, we do see now again the call volume is higher here than the put volume here. Now, if you look here a little bit even deeper, we scroll down a little bit more, we do see that this trend does continue. Now we do have calls higher than puts volume here, all the way towards May, April, and even higher dates here. And this does show that there is lots of bullishness being priced into Nvidia, although there is just that short-term headwind here. We are seeing that the 9th of January, which is where we believe that there's going to be some type of higher selling and additionally maybe some resistance levels. But after that, we should see some recuperation and continued upside for the continued expected dates here well into the future for Nvidia. Overall, the next few weeks are going to be critical as we see how the market digests a 70% drop and whether the AI ROI concerns are real or just noise. I'll be tracking every major move, every options, as well as every regulatory update right here on this channel. If you want to stay ahead of the volatility and know exactly when the smart money is buying back in, make sure you hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications. You don't want to miss our next deep dive into the semiconductor sector. Now, what do you think? Is the AI bubble finally popping, or are you buying this dip? Let me know down in the comment sections below your price targets, and as always, don't let the markets whip you guys out. I'll see you guys on the next one.